David's here. Oh,
Good morning.
okay. I believe that we are up to the mission. Oh, I wanted to share something very interesting. Today is a big yard site. Today is a very big yard site. It's the yard site of the Minchas Loser. Today is the yard site of the Minchas Loser. So I wanted, let me see if I can find it. I wonder if I could play a video and record at the same time. Let's see if I could do that. There's a beautiful video. That's right. It's a 2-minute video. So let's see. Here it is. I'm not sure if it's going to play. If it's not going to play, I have to click share. What? I'm trying to get on the big screen. You see it on the big screen? You see it on the big screen?
Yeah, I see it.
So today is the yard site of the Minchas Loser. What?
Even Shabbos. Ja.
No, this is not on Shabbos.
You have to wait that in the fields of the Chassid.
Look at the pushing that went on those days. The same thing. The same thing as nowadays. You can actually speak in a second. Yeah. Okay, now I'll get started. Today is the Minchas Loser's yard site, and today is also the birthday of someone in Arbus Medrash who's named after the Minchas Loser. You know who's named after the Minchas Loser? The Minchas Loser's name was Chaim Loser. Chaim Loser Rabinovich. So who in Arbus Medrash is named Chaim Loser? I'll give you a hint. He doesn't come. No, he lives in Toronto, but he hasn't been here in 2 years. It's together with his son. Because his son's the doctor doesn't let his son come to shul because it's too dangerous for the parents. Chaim Sasman's name is Chaim Loser. Did you know that he's named after the Minchas Loser? Do you know the story why he's named after the Minchas Loser? His father was a Mesnagid. And his father was sitting on a train once, going wherever he was going in Europe. And on the train was the Minchas Loser with this Hasidim with a kippke. And they wanted a daven mincha. And they had 9 people that needed it tainted. So they were going up and down the train. And they saw the sheet and said, "Everyone goes to Kim and Daven and the Rebbe." He says, "Thanks, but no thanks. I don't need it. I'm happy. I'm good." Nine, the Rebbe, please, bitte, Kim. So he comes there for a minute on the train. The Daven mincha. And after they tell him, "Can guy beten for the Rebbe with the hills?" He says, "Hey, I wish kein Rebbe. Got the Eibisch, I wish kein Rebbe." He says, "No, go to the Rebbe." So he went to Mikach Rebbe and they were speaking, and he told him he doesn't have children for a very long time. He didn't have children. He was married like 10 years. He didn't have children. So the Minchas Loser gave him a brucha that he should have a child. And there was a little bit more to the story, but I don't want to make it sound more balmoifistic than it was. And what happened was he was born like maybe a couple of days before or after the Mikach Rebbe was nifter. So his parents named him after the Minchas Loser because it was a brucha for the Minchas Loser. So Chaim Sasman is a brucha for the Minchas Loser. No, the Belshman could be the Rebbe said you should name it after me, and I don't know if it could be there was more involved. Okay, I figure I love your background.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. No, it's fine. Okay, so let's see the Heilige Gemara. Let's look at the Heilige Mishnah. Bas Yisrael who reses l'koyin. The Bas Yisrael who's reses to a koyin. Now we're going to be chazering over a sugya that we had. We had a sugya that the etem erishin is a kinyan, and if a kohen marries a woman with erison, she should be able to eat truma. And if a Yisrael marries a bas kohen, she is no longer allowed to eat truma because now she's married to a Yisrael. So technically, erison is what makes the kinyan that would allow or disallow someone to eat truma. However, even though erison is a kinyan, nevertheless, if a kohen only made kedushin on a bas Yisrael, she still may not eat truma. And we said that's only midirabanan because either we're afraid of a simpin, we're afraid that after he makes nasuin and he gets up close with her, he might not like her anymore, and therefore the kedushin will be batal l'mafreya. A, or B is we're afraid since she's living at home, if he gives her truma to eat, she might share that truma with her family members. So, but simpin, a mim. No, simpin is a lashon mishnayos. It's a lashon gemara. So Zakir Bas Yisrael Mureses L'Kohen. If you had a Bas Yisrael who's Mureses L'Kohen, so we know she cannot eat truma because of the gzeira of a simpin, or because she might feed it to her family. Muberes Mikohen. What if she's Muberes Mikohen? So she was married to the Kohen, and the Kohen died, and she's a Muberes. She's not allowed to eat truma. Remember, we said that if she's a live child, then she could eat truma. But if she's only Muberes, she cannot eat truma. Or Shemeres Yavim L'Kohen. Her husband, who was a Kohen, died, didn't leave over children, and now she was waiting for Yibam. Or V'chein Bas Kohen L'Yisrael. If a Bas Kohen was Mekudeshes to Yisrael, all of these in the list, Loi Soichal B'Truma. They may not eat truma. How about a Bas Yisrael? Mu'ureses L'Levi. A Bas Yisrael who was Mekudeshes to a Levi, or Me'uberes Mi-Levi, or a Shemeres Yavim L'Levi, or V'chein Bas Levi L'Yisrael, Loi Soichal B'Maiser, they cannot eat Maiser. So you might jump on me and tell me a Yisrael is not allowed to eat Maiser, right? That's the first question that the Gemara asks. Clearly, from the halacha that the Mishnah teaches us, is a Yisrael may not eat Maiser. Bas Levi Mureses L'Kohen. What if a Bas Levi is Mureses L'Kohen? Or Me'uberes Mikohen? Or Shemeres Yavim L'Kohen? V'chein Bas Kohen Levi Loi Soichel Loi B'Truma V'Loi B'Maiser. These people, Sai wouldn't be able to eat Truma, and Sai wouldn't be able to eat Meiser. They can't eat Truma because if they're not married to the Kohen, with an Usuin, they don't eat Truma. And they can't eat Meiser because there's other factors involved. Either she's married to a Kohen, so the Gemara is going to analyze this. So the first question the Gemara asks is, where did we ever get this from that a Yisrael cannot eat Meiser? We say, hey, Zara, Lazi Zayin Zara. Zara, mi aloy achle b'maiser. Can't a Yisrael eat Meiser? Omar Nachman Omar Shmuel, Hamani Reb Meir he. This is going according to the Shita of Reb Meir. The Omar Meiser Rishon Osel Zarim. Reb Meir is the Shita of a Tana who holds that even Meiser Rishon, that is, which is given to the Levi, a Yisrael is not allowed to eat Meiser. So then it's just like Truma. The Tanya we learned. Truma l'koyin u'ma'aser rishon l'levi divrei Meir. Truma goes to the koyin, ma'aser rishon goes to the Levi divrei Meir. Now, how do you see from here, from this line, that it means that a Yisrael may not eat ma'aser? Maybe it just means you give truma to the koyin, you give ma'aser to the Levi. Who said that this brisa is even referring to who's allowed to eat it? So Rashi tells us. Rashi makes two diyukim. Truma l'koyin. Nisinasa l'koyin, it's given to the koyin. U'ma'aser rishon l'levi. Katani, it says ma'aser l'levi. The ma'aser goes to the Levi. Dumya the truma l'koyin. So Rashi says it's similar. Clearly, Rabbi Meir is comparing the halach of ma'aser to the halach of truma. Ma truma achilasa k'nisinasa l'koyin v'loylasa. Just like truma, who's allowed to eat it? Only the person who receives it. That is the koyin, but not a Yisrael. Af ma'aser Levi, achilasei Levi v'loylasa. Zok Rashi, how can I prove that? The lav hachi, if this wasn't Shavir Leil Reb Meir, if this is not what Reb Meir holds, if Reb Meir doesn't hold that a Yisrael may not eat truma meiser, truma l'may katani. Why b'chalal did Reb Meir even mention the halach of truma? Nehida Meiser, it's Trichele Leiruye. Loyavin Lelakoyen, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. I understand why Rabbi Meir needed to tell us that you don't give Meiser Rishon to a coin like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah holds. Rather, you only give it to a Levi. I understand why Rabbi Meir had to speak that out. Ela Truma Lamali. Why would Rabbi Meir need to tell us something that's so posh that Truma is given to a coin? So that's reason number one, where Rashi proves from this brisa that Meiser Rishon and Levi, the Talmud isn't just trying to tell us who you give it to, rather the Talmud is trying to tell us who's allowed to eat it. That's proof number one. And proof number two is v'oid midika mahadir le Rabbi Elazar lashon heter. When we see Rabbi Elazar's response to Rabbi Meir, he says matirai lekoyin mechlal Rabbi Meir nami b'ishav heter. Thank you so much. Since Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah discusses heter, who's allowed to eat it, so it's mashra that is the subject matter discussed in this brisa, whether or not you're allowed to eat it. So Rabbi Meir clearly stated that Meiser Rishon may only be eaten by a Levi and not by a Yisrael. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah matirei lekoyin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah even allows Meiser to be eaten by a kohen. Matirei, he's mater mechlal the ikaman the officer. It must be that there are those who hold that a kohen may not eat Meiser, but that's impossible to say that because Rashi says v'havadai kohanim lav zorim minu. You cannot consider kohanim azor. The kohanim Leviim. Kohanim are also Leviim. So if kohanim are also Leviim, how could you argue that a kohen cannot eat truma, cannot eat meiser? Elaema noisnoi af lekoyin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that the meiser not only can be given to a Levi, but meiser rishon can also be given to a kohen, and the Gemara is going to explain to us soon why. My time in Rabbi Meir. What is the svara? Where did the Meir get this from? That meiser may not be eaten by a Yisrael. Amar Rav Acha Rava. Amar Rav Acha Rabba. Mishmei de Gemara. What does Mishmei de Gemara mean? It doesn't mean that Rav Acha is telling his own svara that he heard over. Mishmei de Gemara means the svara that I'm about to quote, I heard directly from Rav Meir. So Rav Meir actually told us specifically what his reasoning was. It says in the pasuk, yes, Meiser b'nei Yisrael asher rimul Hashem truma. So when the Torah talks about Meiser, the Torah uses the word truma to describe it, and therefore we learn ma truma asur lazarim, just like truma is asur lazarim, af Meiser rishon asur lazarim. So it's from this pasuk that Reb Meir learns that Meiser rishon may not be eaten by Yisrael. Correct the Gemara. If you're going to make a hekesh from Meiser to truma, so then there's more things that we should learn from Truma to Meiser. And let's say, Ima Truma, Chayavin alav Misa, V'chaimish. Just like Truma, if a Yisrael eats it, he's Chayiv Misa B'nei Shemayim, and he has to pay a Chaimish back to the Kohen. So in addition to what he has to pay back, the Truma he has to add 20%. So maybe that halacha should apply, Af Meiser Chayavin alav Misa V'chaimish, because we're comparing Meiser to Truma. Amarkra, the pasuk tells us that these two items that we just raised do not transmit to Meiser. Why? Because the pasuk says regarding Truma, Umesu boy, one will die for Truma, ki yechalalu, because they were mechalat if a Yisrael eats it. The Yosav Chamishisai Olav, and an extra 20% has to be added to it. So we have two limudim. Boy will live by Meiser. The Misa is only by Truma, not by Meiser. Allah, the 20% is added to the Truma below Meiser. So that is the Shita of Reb Meir. The Rabbanan also have a pasuk that compares Meiser to Truma. So for what halacha do they use this hekesh for Meiser to Truma? Rabbanan, ma Truma toiveles, af Meiser rishon nami toiv. Just like if you don't take off Truma, the produce is Hevel, and there's an Isser to eat it, and there's a Chiv Mitzvah D'Shemayim, so too, if you don't take off Meiser, it creates Tevel as well. Uchidetanya, and like we learned, Rabbi Yosy Simon Yachol lo yehi chayiv ela al Tevel shaloi huram imenu kol iker. You might have thought that what's Tevel? What is there a Chiv Mitzvah to eat? That's if you didn't separate anything from it yet. None of the matanas have been separated yet. But huram imenu truma gedayla. If you had already been mafresh truma, but v'loy hura mimenu ma'aser rishon, but you still didn't have a chance to take off Meiser Rishon. Or Meiser Rishon, if you've already taken off Meiser Rishon, V'loi Meiser Sheni, but you haven't had a chance yet to take off Meiser Sheni, V'afilu Meiser Ani, or even on a Meiser Ani year, if you didn't have a chance to take off Meiser Ani, Minayin, how do you know that this produce is still also to eat with the Chiyav Misa B'dei Shemayim? Hamadoimer, L'suchal Lechol B'sharecha. And this is what it says in the Parsha of Edom Eisris. It's kedai to look this up inside. So Devarim Yud Beis is L'suchal Lechol B'sharecha. Because it puts everything into place. It says, let's see if we can find it over here. It says, L'suchal Lechol B'sharecha. Let me read it for you inside the pasuk. L'suchal Lechol B'sharecha, Masar Degoncha, B'siraishcha, B'yitzarecha, you're not allowed to eat these bisharecha. Then the pasuk says elsewhere, that's talking about meiser. So we say as follows. Just like when it said bisharecha, the Saveyu is referring to Meiser Ani. Av Sha'arecha Amar Kam. So too when it says Sucha Lechel B'Sharecha Meiser Ani. The Amar Achman Alei Sucha. And the pasuk says you shouldn't eat it. In other words, you're not allowed to eat it before it becomes, before you're mafresh the Meiser from it. And therefore you have a raya that any part of the matanos that had not yet been separated from your main bulk produce renders the produce tevel, and there'll be an isser. So you might ask, if this is the limud here, why do we need the hekesh from Truma to Meiser? Right? We just said that the Rabbanan are going to use the fact that the Torah calls Meiser Asher Yerimu Lashem Truma, the fact that the Torah calls it Truma, that's how we know that Meiser makes tevel. Well, and we brought a raya from Rabbi Yosy, where Rabbi Yosy has his own pasuk. So why would I need two psukim to teach me the same halacha?
No, if you didn't separate it, it doesn't say that if you eat it. Maybe if you separate it and then you can eat it.
Well, that's exactly how it works. You separate the meiser and then you can eat the remaining.
No, even if you eat the meiser after you separate it, maybe that.
We're not talking about eating the meiser. We're not talking about eating the meiser. We're talking about eating the tevel.
The way that he wants to learn that meiser has the same consequence, because if you didn't separate it, then it's still stable with the consequence of a chiyuv.
Right.
But that's only if you didn't separate, didn't do the initial.
That's what tevel is.
Because there's all what happened in Shabbos. So you can say.
Once I separate, it's not tevel. It doesn't mean you have to give it to the Leviim.
Doesn't mean that you actually have to physically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So that doesn't show that if you eat the nice, that if you have that
We're not talking about eating meiser. We're talking about eating tevel.
But he wants to learn from here that eating mice, the Mai wants to learn that eating mice has the consequence of a chiyuv, you know? We're
not in the Reb Meir anymore. Now we're going according to the Rabbanon. They learn not that eating meiser has a chiyuv misa. The Rabbanon learn that the same way if you don't take off truma, the produce is still tevel. If you didn't take off meiser, the produce is also tevel. But maser itself, according to the Rabbanon, a zor is allowed to eat. Okay, so the question is now, why do I need two separate psukim, according to Rabbanan, to tell me that if you don't take off meiser, the produce is still tevel? Zokt Gemara, very simple. The imay hasam, if we only had the pasuk of leisuchal lechal b'sharecha, hava min lalab, I would have only known that there's a lab to eat the tevel if I wasn't mafresh to meisers. Aval misa loy, but I wouldn't know there's a chiv misa, kamash malon. That's why the Torah compares it to truma to tell you that it's just like truma, and there would be a chiv misa to eat tevel if you were not mafresh meisers from it. Okay, so that's why you need two psukim. Lishnachrin. There's another lesson of how this conversation went down. Meiser rishon de tevel how do I know that Meiser Rishon, if you don't separate it, the products are still Tevel? We learn it from Rabbi Yosy. So how could you tell me that we learn it from the pasuk comparing Meiser to Truma, where it says earlier we had Yes, Meiser b'nei Israel asher yirim l'Hashem Truma. We have Rabbi Yosy. Zok the Gemara, Ima he have him in a lap. Aval misaloi kamash malon. So we're really saying the same thing, except instead of saying it, just presenting the information, the Gemara is asking the kasha first and then answering. But it's the same thing that we know the lab from v'achlu b'sharecha b'saveyu and l'sucha lechal b'sharecha. And the chiyav bisa we know because it's compared to truth. Gabaltic. So b'mayu kim takreb meir. So far we understood the brisa, we understand the Mishnah because we explained it like Reb Meir. So the first case, the first set of cases in the Mishnah are talking about a Bas Yisrael L'Kohen and the Bas Kohen Yisrael, where the only way they can eat Truma if a Bas Yisrael is Nesua to the Kohen, or if she has a live child from the Kohen, vice versa. Once a Kohenes marries, becomes Mekudeshes to a Yisrael, she can no longer eat. And that same thing, according to Reb Meir, applies to Meiser as well. Because, like we just said, Reb Meir holds that a Zor may not eat Meiser. But I'm safe. Let's look now at the third set of cases mentioned in the Mishnah. And that was Bas Levi Mureses L'Kohen. The Bas Levi is Mureses L'Kohen. It says over there that the Bas Levi may no longer eat Meiser. Why not? A Kohen can eat Meiser, and a Levi can eat Meiser. So what is the problem if a Bas Levi is Mureses L'Kohen? Or a Bas Kohen L'Levi? If a Bas Kohen is Mureses L'Levi, okay, I understand why she might not be able to eat Truma anymore, but why can't she eat Meiser? Loi Soichal, Loi B'Truma V'Lei B'Meiser. Hacha, my Zaris Ika. There's no Zaris here, because if she's a Levi, she for sure can eat Meiser, and the fact that she's married to a Kohen shouldn't stop her from being able to eat Meiser. So what is Pshat in the third set of cases in the Mishnah? Rabbi Shai says, Zok Rabbi Shai says, my Eino Eicheles de Katani. What do we mean when it says Eino Eicheles? It means Eina Noisenes Rishus Litra. It means she can't appoint somebody to be mafresh, trumas, and maestris from her husband's property. So let's see how Rashi learns, because what Rashi learns, which Tosfos argues on, is we're being chayzer now from what we said a moment ago, that the Reisha of the Mishnah is going according to Reb Meir, who says that Yisrael cannot eat truma, who says that Yisrael cannot eat meiser, and in fact, Reb Meir holds. Until now, we said that Reb Meir is learning in the Reisha that a Yisrael will not eat meiser. Now we're being chayzer from that, and we're going to explain the whole Mishnah with this new approach. Tosfos disagrees. Tosfos holds that we're still sticking to the teretz that we hold like Reb Meir, and that's why Yisrael cannot eat meiser, and we're only using this pshat to explain the last case of the Mishnah with the Levi and the Kohen. So what does it mean? Enyan Esenes Rishos L'Shlucha. She is married to this man. She was Mekudeshes by the Kohen. This Levi was Mekudeshes by the Kohen. She cannot go to a shliach and say, Litra Meiser shall oros. I'm mureses to this guy. Do me a favor. Go take Trumas and Meisers off of his produce so that I can eat it. Will the harm man Trumas Meiser? So the question is, does a wife who's only mureses have a right to appoint somebody to be misakin the tevel of her husband? So my einay cheles tekatani, einay senis reshus litra. Zok to Gemara mechlal b'nesuin senis reshus. It seems that since she's an arusa, she can't appoint somebody to be mafish trumas and maishas for her husband's tevel. Are you saying if she was nesua, she could? Since when did she become a balabos over his products? So Gemara in, as a matter of fact, she would be able to. But Tanya, we actually went to Brisa to support that. It says in the pasuk, "Bachaltem oisoi b'chol makom," and the pasuk says, "Atem uveseichem," you and your household. This uveseichem is a chiddush, and Rashi tells us, "Hishva hakosav ishtoi loy." Atem uveseichem. We're comparing you to your wife. Limed al bas Yisrael Nesula Levi. It teaches that if you have a bas Yisrael who's Nesula Levi, Limed al Nesua bas Yisrael shenesenes rishus litrin. she can actually instruct somebody to be mafresh, trumas, and maishris from her husband's produce. You have a beautiful kasha. Right? Mama, sure kasha. Zok to Gemara, Amrit, let's think about this. We already know that Alt Kinyan Beisoy, Alt Kinyan Kasboy, a wife is even allowed to eat truma, which is much more chomer than Meiser. Meiser Akala Kolshake. I surely don't need the pasuk to tell me that the wife of a Levi is allowed to eat Meiser, because the wife of a Kohen is even allowed to eat truma. So it must be that the chiddush here is even a greater chiddush, telling me that a wife can instruct somebody to be mafresh, trumas, and maishras. Ella must be limed al nesua bas Yisrael shonesenas rishos litra. So that was the teretz of Reb Sheshes. Mar bereder Ravana Amar loymar, to tell you a different halacha. Shein cholkin la meiser beveis hagranos. The reason why we say that if she's married, the Bas Levi who's married to a Kohen, with the Bas Kohen who's married to a Levi, not pshat that she cannot eat truma, about that she could. So if it's a Bas Kohen, she could eat truma. If it's a Bas Levi, she can eat meiser. The whole problem that we're learning over here in our Mishnah that she can't get truma or meiser, it means shein cholkin la meiser beveis hagranos. That if she wants to go to a Yisrael who has produce and she wants to collect trumas and maishras, she'll say, I'm a Leviah, I also want meiser. I'm a Kayanis, I also want truma. We don't allow that to happen. We don't allow a married woman to go and collect trumas and maishras in the fields. And there's a machloikis as to the reason for that. If the svara is because of yichud, it makes a lot of sense. So as far as we don't want women going around in fields, because they might find themselves in someone's field by themselves without anybody else there, and that's not a good situation. That's one svara. So if you're out in the field and no one's around, yeah. Ella l'manda amar mishum grusha. If the xeris of a grusha, and the problem with grusha is, imagine this woman is a Eishes Kohen, and she's getting truma, and then she gets divorced. But not everybody knows she's divorced, so she can continue going to get truma, and they might give her truma by mistake. Therefore, you'll never give her truma unless her husband's there, because otherwise it's possible that she'll go collect truma even when she's no longer entitled. Grusha. I'm gonna look back. I'm gonna look here into the side girsa. Mi loy achla b'truma. If she's a bas kohen who's a grusha, surely she can eat truma. She can eat truma from her father's household. So why wouldn't you be able to give a grusha who's a bas kohen truma when she's married? What should be the problem? If you're asking me a kasha like that, why a grusha bas kohen? Why she wouldn't be able to eat truma? I'll ask you even better. Grusha bas levi. Mila achla b'meiser, a grusha bas Levi should be able to eat meiser as well. So why is it that these women, we don't let them take meiser or truma, depending on if they're married to a Levi or if they're married to Yisrael, if they're a bas Levi? What should be the problem? There, since she's a bas Levi, even if she's miguresha, she's allowed to eat meiser. She's allowed to get meiser. Ella, obviously, the gzera is gzera mishum grusha bas Yisrael. We don't let any divorced women take trumas and maishers, even though they're entitled, because they might be a bas kohen, they might be a bas Levi. We don't let them because a bas Yisrael who was married to a kohen that was taking trumas might continue to take trumas after she's divorced, or a bas Yisrael who's married to a Levi might continue to take meiser after she was divorced from the Levi. So, Frank Gemara, if you're telling me that these married women cannot take trumas and maishers, either because of yichud or because of this gzer mishum grusha, so why is our Mishnah talking about the fact that she's an arusa? Even in the Nesua should be the same problem. If the reason why you're not giving them is because of yichud, it doesn't make a difference if she's an arusa or a Nesua. Yichud is the same problem. If the problem is because we're afraid they'll continue to collect after their divorce, what weiter? It shouldn't make a difference if it's an arusa or a Nesua. So Zaktamar Inachanami, according to this pshat, the last set of cases in the Mishnah that talks about the Bas Levi, the Kohen, the Bas Kohen, the Levi, could even be speaking by an Asua. But I did the Tana Reisha Mu'ureses, since the Reisha is only relevant by Mu'ureses, because if she was Nesua to the Kohen, she would be able to eat Truma. Tananami Seifa Mu'ureses, that's why the Mishnah uses the word Mu'ureses. So when it's interesting, because you learn the Mishnah and you have like 3 sets of cases, and you assume that they're all talking about the same thing. But in fact, they're all talking about different things, right? The first case is speaking about Abbas Yisrael to a Kohen, and we say if she's Mureses to a Kohen, she can't eat, and if Abbas Kohen is Mureses to Yisrael, she can't eat. Talking about Achila, and we're following Reb Meir. The second Shita, the first case is Kohen, everybody agrees to. The first case is according to everybody. The second case is only according to Reb Meir, according to the Shita, who holds that a Israelis cannot eat meiser. And the third case is a completely different case. It's talking about whether or not they can collect the Vesagranos, which was the Shita of Marbrid Ravana. And if you want to go with the Shita of Reb Sheshes, the question is whether or not a married woman can tell whether or not an Arusa can make a shliach to be mafresh trumas and maishers on her husband's truma. So not at all like what the Mishnah looks like at face value. Okay, Tadrabad, truma l'kohen. Truma goes to the kohen. So far we've outlined a machlokes between Reb Meir the Tana and Reb Elazar ben Azariah the Tana, where Meir holds that Ma'aser Rishon can only be eaten by a Levi, and Reb Elazar ben Azariah holds Ma'aser Rishon could even be eaten by a Kohen. So now we're going to have another machlokes about the same thing. Tana Rabban, Truma l'kohen u'Ma'aser Rishon Levi divrei Rabbi Akiva. This sounds very similar to what Reb Meir said, right? Reb Elazar ben Azariah Reb Elazar ben Azariah says l'kohen only to a Kohen. Frank to Gemara, l'kohen v'loy Levi. You're going to say that Meiser, according to Reb Elazar ben Azariah, may only eaten by a Kohen and not eaten by a Levi. A Levi is for sure a Levi. So no, ema af l'kohen. What Reb Elazar ben Azariah is saying is not only can Meiser be eaten by a Levi, it can also be eaten by a Kohen. Frank to Gemara, my time with Rabbi Akiva. What is this for Rabbi Akiva? The Chsivit says, "Ve'el halavim tidaber v'yamart aleim." When the Torah talks about the matana of Meiser, it's speaking to the Leviim. So it's very obvious. The Leviim call mishtoikra. The Torah is talking about Leviim. So it's Leviim who eat Meiser, not the Kohanim. The Idach, and what do the Rabbanim hold? Who hold that the word Leviim does not restrict Achilas Meiser to Leviim only. It also allows Kohanim. So the Gemara, he holds like the famous Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. The Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Be'esim v'arba mekaymis, 24 places in Tanakh, Nikru Kohanim Leviim. The Torah refers to Kohanim using the word Leviim. Technically, they were Leviim, right? They came from Shevet Levi, but they referred to as Leviim. V'zeh echad mehem. I'll give you one example of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. It says in Yecheskel v'Kohanim haLeviim b'nei Tzadok. So Huadin, our pasuk that's talking about Meiser, which says Ve'el haLeviim, it includes the Kohanim as well.
Leviim were never called Kohanim.
That's correct. Are you insulted?
What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
By the way, there are examples in the Torah. Why does he go to Yecheskel?
Why did Yeshua ben Levi use the example of the pasuk Yecheskel?
Yeah, there's in the Chamisha Chumshe Torah. I know.
Maybe if he would have used that pasuk in Chumash, we would have all known that one.
Yeah, but it's more authoritative.
I hear. And we have an example. Our example is a prime example. Leviim Tedaber. He could have used that one.
Right.
Unless he holds, he could have used that one. So Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, Hacha le'matzis amr. Rabbi Akiva said over here you wouldn't be able to say that it means a kohen as well. This Ve'el haLeviim, referring to Meiser, cannot be referring to Kohanim as well. The Chsivit says, "B'achaltam oisai b'chol mokim." It says regarding the Meiser, you can eat it everywhere. Clearly, Meiser is only given to a person to eat if he's able to eat it everywhere. a kohen cannot eat meiser everywhere. You know where a kohen cannot eat meiser? Yotza kohen she'en yochel la'ochle b'beis forest. A kohen can't eat in the basic forest. You know why he can't eat in the basic forest? Because he can't be in the basic forest. What? Yeah, meiser Tom is not a problem. Only Truma is a problem. Yeah, meiser Sheni not meiser Rishon. Yeah. So
No one's really allowed to eat in the
meiser Sheni
basic
could be a
forest.
problem, but not meiser Rishon. Right, I don't. Right, I think we learned that earlier in the Masechta. Meiser Sheni is a problem. That's right.
No one's allowed to eat in the basic forest, really.
Really? What if you're hungry? Even if you're hungry? But I keep it straight. But the Chassidim, my the tits is like the rush. My halachayim, who's like the rush? Okay, let's see the Gemara. B'chalta Moshe b'chamokim mishi yochel loichle b'chamokim yotza koyin she'ein yochel loichle b'basic forest. This excludes a koyin who wouldn't be able to eat in the basic forest. So I have a raya that you're not allowed to eat in the basic forest. Because if you would be allowed to eat in the basic forest, there would be 100 food vendors already in the Tzvas B'Solim for the people touring through. Right? If you go through the whole B'Solim, you can't get a drink, you could die. So, they would for sure. No, there's no. But a mikveh that's in the land, but in the basic forest itself, but a b'shosef. They have vending machines that take money from you. Right? There's a whole bunch of mashaluchim there. But how come they're not selling? They're not. How come they don't give out treats? They don't give out drinks. Okay, is that for idach? That's right. The idach kol heicha the boy. The person who learns that it does include kahanim, what's pshat va'achalta Moshe b'chol makom, means kol heicha the boy wherever he wants, meaning the loy boy chayma. All it means to say is not that you can eat it anywhere, even in the basic forest. It means that it doesn't need to be eaten within Yerushalayim. That's halacha number one. And halacha number two that you learn of b'chol makom is that if you're a tamei, when you eat meiser, you don't get malchus. Mashenkin, if you're a tamei, you eat truma, you get malchus. Zok to Gemara. Hahik insa, there was this garden, the Hava Shokol Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah meiser Rishamina. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was a kohen, and he would come and take meiser from a certain garden. Also, Rabbi Kiva held that a kohen wasn't allowed to eat meiser. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah held a kohen could take meiser, but Rabbi Kiva held a kohen couldn't take meiser. So what did Rabbi Kiva do to prevent Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to take meiser from this field? Also, Rabbi Kiva, ahadre lepischa levei he opened up a door from this field into a basic forest so that it would be hard for Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to get in there because he's a kohen, he can't become tamei. Omar, so Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, according to certain shittas, made a snide remark. According to certain shittas, it was a complimentary remark. And he said, Akiva v'tamilai. Akiva, you schlep, you're a shepherd, you're schlepping there with your knapsack. V'nachai, you know what? Me doesn't make a difference. I'm a multimillionaire. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was a very wealthy man. Sean, doesn't make a big deal to me. You're making a big deal out of it. That's one shot in how this was a snide remark. I'm sorry? What are you talking about? You ever saw a rich guy that doesn't want more? The other pshat they say is Akiva b'tamiloi. I mean, you just became from, and then the Shangavar and the Kanaka, you're telling me already what the halachas are. I'm sorry. He was, but I don't know how old he was in comparison to Akiva.
When the gross it ever, then again after you out.
Right.
Yeah,
but because of what?
But then they would down.
But how? No, I understand. But how old? How old were they in comparison to each other? But when Rabbi Kiva was how old?
In the 70s.
He was. So let me tell you then another chat that was complimentary. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, "Look what a tzaddik Rabbi Kiva is. Rabbi Kiva is an ani, and he knows what it means to be an ani. So he wants to save as much as these matas, even if the matas levia, he wants to save it for those people who are more needy. And he cared that to prevent me, who's a wealthy person, from taking meiser because he wants to preserve the meiser for the Leviim who need the meiser. But nach gedenk, he knew what it means to be poor. So sagt the more itmar. Mipnei ma kontu Leviim b'maiser. Now, up until now, we're discussing whether or not a kohen is allowed to eat maiser. Now we're getting into a new sugi. Rashi says, since we're talking about this, and we just quoted the story with Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, it brought up a different point, that there was a time in the history of Klal Yisrael that the Leviim were cancelled, and the knas was that not only do they get meiser exclusively, now kohanim can also collect meiser. So, fact the Gemara, mipnei ma konsu itmar mipnei ma konsu Leviim b'meiser. Why were Leviim counted with meiser that they don't have exclusive rights to the meiser anymore? Zogt Gemara pligi ba Rabbi Yonasan v'Sabi. Rabbi Yonasan and a gadol named Sabi were arguing about it. Chad Omar shaloi olu b'mei Ezra. One said because they didn't come up b'mei Ezra. The Chad Omar, and the other one says kedei sheyisru kohanim alav b'mei temasa. So when the kohen is tamei, he can't eat truma, so he's going to starve to death. By letting the kohanim have meiser, they'll have what to eat when they're tamei. Correct the Gemara. Bishlama lamanda Omar shaloi olu. Bishlama, if you're going to learn like the Manda Mishlayel, so that's the reason why the Leviim were punished, because they didn't come up. That's why they were cancelled. According to the Manda Omer, that it's only so the poor Kahanim Shalabah didn't get Tomei, Mishum Kahanim continue the Leviim, because the Kahanim have a problem. You have to take something away from the Leviim. Elakul Alma Knasa, Shaloi Olu b'mei Ezra. Everybody holds the reason why the Leviim lost their exclusivity on Meiser is because they didn't come up. The question is, who was given the additional rights to take it? The Knas is that now a Nim can also take Meiser, Umar Sover, Kaihanim b'meitamason, Maniyim Ninu, that Kaihanim b'meitamason can also take. Right, they are in it, but it's not all.
Isn't this an Ikera Derisa? The Derisa, the Torah says only the Leviim could take Meiser. Now they're saying other people could take it besides.
Don't they have a koich of Hefker Bez and Hefker?
Yeah, but they could. They have the power, but do they exercise it willy-nilly? It doesn't look like...
I guess Ezra felt that it wasn't willy-nilly. Ezra felt that they didn't want to come up to the second base of Mikdash.
You need the Leviim in the back.
Which is also a big kasha, because the Leviim, there were Leviim in the second base of Mikdash. We know there were Leviim in the second base of Mikdash. So there's different shittas about that. What do you mean it didn't come? The Leviim did come. So there are different shittas about it. There are certain shittas who hold that only Leviim who had mumen came up, not Leviim who didn't have mumen. So that was the taina. Now there's a whole shaila if a Levi with a mum is allowed to sing shira or not. It all depends. We learned the sugi before. If it's ikr shir b'peh, then you have, that's a big one. Yeah. If it's ikr shir b'peh, then that's the main avoided. Then a Levi b'mum can't sing. But if it's ikr shir b'kli shir, if the main shir was the instruments, then even a Levi with a mum would be able to play instruments as long as the instruments were good. But I'll call upon them. This is why the Leviim were constant. Zok to Gemara. Yes, there are certain Rishonim that as well. Yes, that's correct. Zok to Gemara. So Oibazoi Ela Rabbi Kiva, my timer Ahadra. Oh, the Ritva says that. Oh, so Moti is quoting from the Ritva. He saw it brought down by one of the Malaktim. He brings down from the Ritva that says that Ezra used the svara of Hefker Bes and Hefker. So Ela Rabbi Kiva, my timer Ahadra lepischa leveikar. If in fact there's such a gzeir that the Pehanim can take, so why did Rabbi Kiva want to stop Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah from taking Meiser? The Gemara was alumnus. Hachi Karmelei. This is what he told Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Idika asus b'toris knasa islach. if you're admitting to me that you're not entitled to Meiser, but since Ezra made a knas, that's why I'm taking it. No, then I don't mind. But if the Ika Hashis B'Tarz Chalukah, if you're coming with the right, you only have a rech to take, then less law, then I don't want you to take. How do we taka know that the Leviim did not come up in the time of Ezra? Zok the Gemara, because it says in the pasuk in Ezra, "V'akaptem el nahar." I gathered Klal Yisrael to the river Habal Eyu, v'nechna sham yomim shloisha. We rested there 3 days. V'avina ba'am, and I checked out the nation. Uv'kayhanim and the Kayhanim. Uv'b'nei Levi loy matzashi sham. But I couldn't find any b'nei Levi. So there you see that the Leviim didn't come out. Omar B'chista, b'tchila loy hayu ma'amidim shoitrim elam in Leviim. Used to be that the only shoitrim that they would appoint would be from the Leviim. And if I'm not mistaken, the reason for that was because they were the only people by the ego that weren't nichshel. They were the ones who had to be the enforcers. They were the enforcers at the time of the ego. Shenemar b'shoitrim haleviim lefneichem. But achshav, now I guess since they were niknas and they don't come up anymore, so the halach is, who are the shoitrim from Klal Yisrael? Ein mamidim shoitrim elam Yisrael. We take people from the general from Yisrael. Shenemar v'shoitrim harabim b'rashechem. There's many shoitrim, and Rashi says the Hainu Yisrael, that must be referring to Yisrael. Shem rabim Leviim. There's more Yisraelim than there are Leviim.
I just want to make a practical point. What were the Leviim supposed to do for a living when they arrived in Eretz Yisrael? Now, the regular people, they had property somehow, and they put a crop in the ground. And when they came to do their maasros, for the first time probably in 70 years, they took maasros. So the Leviim would have to wait a whole year until the crop was ready for them. If maaser was reinstituted, they'd have to wait to be fed. Otherwise, they couldn't.
And what
make
about the
a living.
Kohanim?
Kohanim from Korbanos?
The Kohanim make protein. The Kohanim from the Karbonis. So they don't know.
Everybody served themselves.
They weren't both between the two places. They were both.
Only be farmers.
No, Leviim were.
No, in those days everything was agriculture.
Leviim were the.
There were no stockbrokers in those days.
Weren't the Leviim the rabbis, the roaming?
Akiva, Dave is being malamet chus on your ilk, and they're saying that it wasn't your fault that you didn't come up. There was no parnasa. If you wanted, they wanted to wait a year. And they were going to wait till the first harvest, and then they would come up.
One second, did they live in the Ari Miklat?
Hold on.
Or in Leviim?
Eretz Yisrael was decimated. Okay, I don't even know where the people
Talking
who
about when they
came.
came and Ezra brought them back up after Golos Bavel, Eretz Yisrael was ruins. It was complete ruins. So basically, the Bnei Yisrael, they would start planting. But,
What did they?
Chaim's asking good. They also, the Bnei Yisrael also had to wait till their parameters grew.
And the Leviim Kodesh means Oichel Kimmer Misburich Mayo. They ate a drop. And
Ich had the Bruch auch. I hear.
Went to Reb Shayla, they got food.
Okay, there's nice touches about what occurred and what the Xeris were. We have like 1 minute left, so let's just learn a little bit some of the lines of places. So let's see what touches. But Bima Consul Leviim B'Maiser. Pirishri, the Metzinu Behedja, we don't find it in Mefurish. Elamatzinu Be'Ezra, we did find in Ezra, Bahaya Koyin Ben Aharon Im HaLeviim B'Maiser Leviim. The Kohanim came together with the Leviim to get Maiser. The Ikal Meimar, the Hachikamar, and you could say this is what it means. Kishayavoyu HaLeviim Lachloik, the Beis Hagranos, when the Leviim come to collect their Maiser. In the Beis Hagranos, Yavayu Imayim Kohanim, they should bring Kohanim with them, meaning we won't give them unless there's Kohanim with them. The Kasha, the Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah, the Leishakli Leviim Klal, Basar Knasa, Ela Kohanim, according to Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah, who held that the Leviim didn't take it all after the Knas, only the Kohanim, so that's what Mati was referring to. Some people held that the Gzeira was, the Knas was, that only Kohanim get, not Leviim, Aloy Mishtama Mehukra. That's not apparent from this pasuk. The Lekala Meimer, you can't say Shahayu hakayanim im halavim lekabo mahem meiser bishalahem. You can't say that what the pasuk is saying is that kayanim came with Leviim to take all of the meiser away from the Leviim. The ha bishalahem lekonsum, because what belonged to the Leviim they didn't take. The muchach v'perek hazraya. So don't say that this means from the Leviim's own produce we took the meiser away from them. That was not taken away from them. Yishlam the Rebbe Nazaya le'nimnu haLeviim mikol v'koil milelech leveis hagranis lachlek l'meiser. Leviim didn't stop collecting meiser because the muchach perek basic subis the choshekim be Ezra shadayin like pashat aknas. In the days of Ezra, when he just introduced the knas, it didn't proliferate all over Klal Yisrael. L'kach nemer, that's why it says in the pasuk sheyelech hakoyin im haLeviim. U'lemandamer knas l'aniyim. And according to the Mandamer who holds that the knas was that it should go to Aniyim, not necessarily Kohanim, Nakat Kohen im Leviim. The reason why the pasuk says that the Kohen that come with Leviim to collect is because the Shchichi Ani Kohanim Tvei, because the most of the poor people in Klal Yisrael are Kohanim. You know why? Because they don't have jobs that pay them. They're primarily busy doing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. They don't have jobs to give them to parnasa. The gam ein lahem karkayos, and they don't have karka to grow their own produce. But who adin ani Yisrael, avada ani Yisrael were also able to come to the granos to take lemanda amar meiser mut lazarim, according to the shittas besides Reb Meir who holds that a zar may eat meiser. Okay, I guess we'll stop here. There's a beautiful sugya, and we will tomorrow, but a mishnah on Tevav in the base.
After